welcome back to another soul session of Corporate Classy, but please come correct podcast. I am your host, Alberta Thomas, and yes, I am back with another one, but today is going to be a pretty interesting episode, and I'm going to tell you why. I've been going around in circles in my mind, wanting to get something that has been weighing on my chest for a very long time. And I kept saying, do I want to open up that? Do I want to deal with that? Am I ready for this part? But when I talk about stepping into a space of making sure, again, my podcast is raw, is real, is transparent, is based upon my experiences, right? Me personally, of what things I go through. And on top of that, the experiences that others may go through where I am able to share because they don't mind. And so this episode is going to be pretty much about something that was weighing heavy on my chest. And guess what? It's time for me to get it off. Thank you for tuning in and being here and listening. First, before I kind of dive in, I want to set the tone just a little bit and kind of paint the picture of when I had a moment of, my God, okay? And so I remember attending a mixer event here in Portland, Oregon, because you guys know that's where I've lived for the last 3 years. Yeah, in Portland, Oregon, where it was like a panel, and I couldn't understand one thing. And the one thing I couldn't understand was someone that was hosting the show kept referring to one of the special guests as a transplant. And so, me being in my mind, like, oh my God, did he transplant something? Did he get a transplant? Like, I'm a little confused about what does that mean? And so I lean into my partner and I'm like, hey, I'm a little confused. What is transplant? And so when he told me, that was referring to people who were not born and raised in Oregon, we were labeled as transplants. So psychologically in my mind, y'all. So imagine me sitting at a mixer in a room with African Americans and they labeled me attending a local event in Portland, Oregon, a transplant. So in that moment, you could probably imagine how I was feeling in that moment and how I got pissed off really fast. And it's funny when I think about it, because I'm like, again, coming from the South, born and raised in the South, okay, with the Black community, with other races there too. And I'm going to get into that a little bit into details later on. But in that moment, I'm like, how can my cultural of people sit here and label me a transplant? And so I was lost. And so I went into this rabbit hole for a really, really long time, trying to navigate through, like, when did this start? Why is it okay? And why are we referring to each other in that matter? And so I got into some rabbit holes about the history of Portland, of course, the history of Oregon, all the back ends. Again, as we probably know, there is not many African Americans in Oregon. We are fairly aware of that. But the ones that's here are labeling outsiders as a transplant. And so when I kind of did deep dive and really got into it and started to ask more questions to gain some clarity, I was like, I gotta talk about this on my podcast because yeah, I don't like that. It's so defensive. It's so wrong. It's the worst thing you could probably refer to someone as. And so let's talk about the basics a little bit. Out here, we are called transplant, meaning apparently I am a transplant because I didn't grow up in Portland, or in other words, I didn't grow up in Oregon. I came from the South. I moved over here, of course, for work. Which, as anybody travel in this world and move around for work, which is fine, right? That's how you get exposed to different cultures. That's how you get exposed to different ways of living and lifestyle. And one thing that I always tell people is get out and explore just what you're comfortable doing. Not saying don't go back home, not saying don't take care of home, but being able to still get out and explore, it will put a lot of things in your mind into perspective, right? And so when I think about that, and I think about, the second part is anytime I talk to someone who is, born and raised, here in Portland, they can immediately pick up on my accent because I'm from the South. We have our own little slang and you can hear it, the volume of our voice. We are very much confident in who we are as African Americans coming from the South. And it's like we've being marked for the way we were raised and because we had a little bit more African Americans in our area, in our state. And I just think about, the East Coast. I think about Cali. I think about the South. I think about how we are marked because we were raised a certain type of way. But the interesting thing is, coming over here and being here for 3 years, I couldn't understand why, if I walk past someone, African American to be exact, I speak. Hey, how you doing? Oh my God, I love your hair. I give compliments, not to just give them. I actually like your hair. I actually love your nails. I actually like your outfit. I wanted to speak to you. Like, what is wrong with that? And for some, and it's not everyone, but for some people who are here, born and raised, and they look at you like you're crazy and don't even speak, or they turn their head so you won't speak to them. What is wrong with speaking? I get it. When you think about the history of Oregon, when you think about the natives that actually grew up here and was raised by their grandparents and was denied housing, denied so many things, and they had to fight their way to remain here in Oregon. What does that have to do with you still being able to speak to another person that spoke or even smile? What does that have to do with anything? And so, just to kind of flip it a little bit, right? Born and raised in the South with my parents, my mother, I have a pretty large family, but I also have a community of white people, of Hispanic people. Like, there is still things that we have to fight for in the South. We're not handed anything. The same things that we as African American go through here in Oregon, we did the same thing in the South. There is no difference. But because we're from the South and we choose to make sure we take care of our people, that's what we choose to do. I remember growing up, my mother and my sister would feed people, do things for people to make sure they're well taken care of. Our culture of people, whether you know them or not, whether you came into town with my brother or myself, you are being treated as such. If someone was to bring some additional person around, we're welcoming you with open arms. In the South, we welcome anybody with open arms. You don't have to come in guarded. You don't have to come in and be called a transplant. We welcome you in with the love, the care, the confidence, the what you need, my brother and sister. And it comes from a place of being genuine. And it's because we were taught to take care of our people by all means necessary. But for me, as an African American, a Black woman at that, who chose to move across country to an area where there is not many people that look like me and not feel supported and loved, that's kind of insane. But let me fast forward it, right? I found my community of people here in Oregon. I am wrapped in love by my community of African American people here in Oregon. But what blows me sometimes is, how are we so segregated within our own culture? I've never seen anything like that. Never. There are so many things that's happening. And the one thing, and I'm going to loop back and get back on track. The one thing that I always keep saying is, if the population of African Americans are so smart here in Oregon, why isn't we're tighter? Why isn't the unity tighter than what it could be? Why is that? Why are we guarded? Why are we guarded if you get someone that's in your space that's not from here? We do good. I go to plenty of events. I donate my time. I donate my money. I support. I do whatever I can. And I don't even know if you're from Oregon or Timbuktu. I don't even know. But if I see you doing good and I know you need some support and I see you busting your behind off here, why wouldn't I lock in with you? That's my mindset. That's how I was raised. That's that deep southern goodness that I love about my culture and coming from the South. Now, let's be clear. This, like I stated at the beginning, the same things that we go through here is the same things that happen any place else. What that got to do with you being kind? What does that have to do with you including people that's not from here? I just need some answers. I hope someone can provide me some answers. Don't come to me with history. I am very aware of your history. I know what you've been through. I can read, I research, I talk, I know. But what is it when it comes to not being able to unify? When I see 50,000, and I'm exaggerating this part, 50,000 of the same nonprofits, but why aren't they coming together? If the community is really that small, why aren't we coming together? Something I just, realized that there are gatekeepers within our own community. And I'm like, how is that? We gotta do better. And I'm not just at this point, it's not just about being here. And again, I speak to my experiences. I speak to what I go through. And then people will tell me all the time, you need to come outside a little more. I come outside to still being marked as a transplant. And I'm gonna still come outside, still being marked a transplant, because I'm from the South. Now, as I continue to talk with people, and again, I always ask questions, I'm like, well, why don't they think that's offensive? How do we sit here and use that type of terminology? Like, why are they labeling us like that's okay? And so some of the things that kind of rings a bell when I talk to natives from Portland, right? Some of the things they say, you don't understand us. You're not a part of this community. You too new to speak up. You too bold for this city. What's wrong with that? You need someone to speak up. You need people in your corner that's bold. We understand, but you got to unguard yourself. You got to open your eyes a little bit and understand that I am your sister. That is your brother. Whether they from here, whether they from the East Coast, whether they from the South, that's your community. So the minute you open up and release and allow the goodness of your culture in, like we will be a force. And so even if I remove myself and I think sometime and I look, I observe a lot. Okay. I don't say much. So this is my probably really my first time being able to speak in this capacity, but it's one of those things that constantly pop back up in my mind, constantly pop back up in my heart that we have to be considered this, that we have to live our life like this. And so it's been 3 years and I'm going to keep it a buck because I'm honest and I'm bold and I'm me. When I moved here, I felt the energy that, oh, you're new vibe, that, oh, you're not from here, are you? And sometimes I'm like, yo, but then I learned quick once you do your research, right? I learned that it has nothing to do with me. It's about the history, the trauma, the fear. But the one thing that's a little gray in the room is the lack of real conversations. I'm not talking about the ones where you fluff and you don't even want to go a little deeper. I'm talking about the real conversations of your history, your trauma, the real conversation of why you don't want to let others who is still your culture into your space. That's the missing part. And I'm ready to have real conversations. I'm ready to talk about it. But when I go, there's never honesty. It's very fluff. How do we need to break that barrier? How do we have some meaningful conversation where we can actually move forward? How can we remove the terminology of me or anybody being called a transplant? A transplant. Those are the real conversations. How do we collectively start to form more of a unity? How do we remove the gatekeepers out the way? How do you take care of each other? Because that's what we do in the South. That's what I know. And I know for sure when you remove those barriers, there is so much that Oregon can get from us as Black people. There is so much. And I want to commend the people who are out there that welcome everybody in and not judging them for coming from a different area, a different, the East Coast, the South, Cali, allowing people in, allowing people to show you who they are, and just welcoming people in. If you come to the South and come knock on our door or your neighbor's door, or you can go down a road to Betty House, like you would feel the love. That's the one thing that I appreciate so freaking much about being from the South is the amount of love, the amount of wanting to make sure you good. If you was my ex cousin in law daughter, like no one cares. Like we're gonna take care of you regardless. And I just think about my family, or I just think about anybody who can be walking in the streets and you're protected in the South. By all means necessary. You see one African American jump, you jumping with them and you don't know them from a can of paint. That's unity. That's love. That's support. That's let's move in, with unity. And the fact that it's so segregated, but yet so small. And even if you're a native here, I see the ones who don't support each other and you're born and raised here. Now, granted, do I know the backstories of why they're this organization not supporting this organization? I don't. None of that matters to me. What matters is we don't move as a unit and we're not welcoming each other and allowing us to meet each other where we are. We all got trauma. All of us. We all do the same thing. We all deal with the same stuff. It's not just here in Oregon. It's not. So I'm gonna leave you guys with this. Being a transplant don't mean you don't belong. It means you chose this place. You came here with something to offer, something to give. So don't let nobody shrink your presence. Don't let anybody make you feel temporary. We're here now. We're not just passing through. And the more we show up boldly, the more we break the mold. So the next time someone hits you with "you're a transplant" line, just say, "Nah, I'm an asset, but thanks for noticing." And y'all, I digress. Peace.